Welcome to the Mental Vet Investing Podcast with your host, Mike, where I talk about investing strategies with a frugal foundation from a veteran's perspective and to invest in self-mental awareness to ultimately become free of bad money habits and stay financially independent. Episode 1. Welcome to my first podcast ever. And in my podcast, I'm going to have to be talking on a weekly basis about two main points. The first point is financial smartness, financial independence, financial freedom, everything that is under that umbrella. Everything from, frugality, financial side hustles, TSP investing, rental properties, and everything else as a veteran, right? I did 20 years in the Navy, retired back in 2017. And for the longest time, I've been wanting to do a podcast because I wanted to start talking about the things that I was learning because it's exciting. It's exciting to see where investing can lead you. And because this is not something that's mainstream taught to most folks. I know speaking for myself, it was not taught to me when I was growing up and even in through my Navy career. So I wanted to do a podcast about it. And then the other idea is mental awareness, specifically when it comes to anxiety, because that's what I struggle with. And I just, I struggled with trying to do I want to do a podcast just about financial investing or not talk about anxiety? And I can't do it. One doesn't go without the other for me. And, because this past year, 2020, we've had the coronavirus. We're still dealing with that. Anxiety runs high everywhere now. And I just felt like it was important enough to recognize it. I am not a doctor. I am not a financial expert professional, but what I am is a retired veteran. And the idea of my podcast shows, and hopefully what keeps you coming every week, is that this will inspire you to at least look at your own financial situation. What are you doing with your finances? The number one key piece I'll say right out of the gate is if you're in a job, or in the military where you make rank and your pay grade increases, you do not increase your spending. That's the golden ticket, the golden rule, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that was the number one thing for me that really got me to look at things differently, totally differently. So the two main ideas is financial smartness and then dealing with anxiety as a veteran. And then, so this show is basically about, how do we do that? And believe me, financial independence, financial smartness has no bias, no matter if you did 4 years, 6, or 30 years in the military, or you're active duty, or a civilian, or federal employee. It all, either you know it or you don't. Either you utilize the information you have and do it, or you don't. So this is good for everybody. But for me, the mental investing or the mental vet investing is what I'm doing to invest my money, mainly. So hopefully this entices you to keep coming in and listen to me. So yeah, and I'll get into about where I'm coming from here in a minute, but the idea of the financial smartness is because, like I said, it's nothing that was ever taught to me. I did 20 years in the Navy. Probably the only thing close to being financially smart was opening a TSP account. But when I opened it back in the 2000, I think it was 2008 or 6, somewhere around there, I was an E5, second class petty officer. I just signed up and I had no clue. I mean, they had S fund, G fund. I can't remember the other ones in the beginning, but no one told us what the hell that was. It's one's the stock market and one's the government fund. Always go with the government fund. So that's what I did. I put most of them, and I was barely contributing whatever the minimum amount was because I wanted to have the most money out of my check every week to buy beer and do stupid shit. So I signed up for that. And unfortunately, I never really looked at my TSP until much later in my career when they came up with the L funds, the L20, L40, the 2040, the 2020. And I finally switched my contributions into that, and I increased it. But man, if I would have known about investing in TSP back then, I would have been in a much different position now, obviously, when it comes to the TSP account. So if you're out there and you have a TSP account, what are you contributing to right now? What is your overall percentage that you're putting out of your check-in towards that? Because and then really two types of investing strategies that I go with, that I kind of blend, is the Dave Ramsey strategy, where you're paying off, you work and pay off your loans. Your high interest loans, your low interest, your high interest credit cards, and there's a step process to paying those off. Baby steps, you pay off this, and then you move on to the next one and the next one. And then you get to a certain point, then you do this. It's kind of a mix of that. And then Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where you don't hold your cash. You take your money, you invest in assets, and then those assets return, you buy more assets. You never hold your cash. You don't own anything outright, particularly. You rent, you don't pay mortgage, those type of concepts. So I kind of found that I'm in the middle. But both outstanding books and concepts from two different people that are, in the mass media these days. So and in my future podcasts, I'll definitely go into which one, how I utilize each strategy in that respect. It'd just be one of the examples of topics I cover on a weekly basis. So more about myself, joined the Navy in 1997 from California, went out and did my first tour in Norfolk. And then I, that was the first time ever leaving out of the state. And back in those days, shit, man, I never thought about saving money at all. As long as I had money to pull out every week or every 2 weeks to get beer, pay for my buddy's beer, pay for my beer. And get, I was in the Navy, so we live on a ship. So just getting off the ship, getting a hotel, I would always pay for that all the time, just to keep some insanity. But yeah, I did a lot of spending. Never once even crossed my mind to start investing, because back then my thought process was, if I can just stick out 20 years, the Navy's, the military, the government's going to pay me a retirement check. And that's basically what I thought. So it wasn't really until I got married in 2009. So I did some time back east and ended up getting stationed back in San Diego. Throughout my military career, I probably did about 6 deployments altogether. So, got stationed in San Diego, and then I met my wife. She's from Mexico, and we got married, I think, back in 2009. And that was really the first time I started to look at what I was spending, because my wife obviously grew up in a different background. And so she was very more conservative with her money. And for example, I used to buy groceries on credit cards. I used to buy food for groceries because I would routinely cash out on my credit card to have cash to buy for whatever. I had a high interest truck payment that I had back then. And when I met her, I was probably an E6. So I was already, I was already 10 plus years in the military and still couldn't figure out how to save money, but, and let's not forget, I was not, great with, my personal self either, because I had a DUI, I had problems with alcohol. So high insurance payments, so forth and so on. But when I met her, she looked at one of my credit cards. She goes, "What in the hell is this? You're paying 18% interest on a credit card, and then you're paying another 5% on the cash amount that you pulled on that same credit card. Insane." And when she pointed that out to me, I was like, "Oh, is that why I'm paying almost $500, $600 a month on a credit card?" Yeah. So the first thing she did was she got a credit card at 0% interest and transferred it to that. And so I kept the same payment. I kept paying $500 something a month on that credit card that was 0%, and we knocked that stupid thing down and got it out. And that's one of the very first things that shined a light on getting more smarter with my finances. And so second thing we did is we got married, and where we got married was on base. It was free. We did not pay money on a big blown up wedding. Instead, we took that money and bought our first house in San Diego. And this was around 2010, early 2010. And, the market had already crashed. And I remember me and her, we must have put in over 60 offers on houses because we were trying to get a VA loan and everybody then was paying cash. So we got the VA loan, and we finally came across a house through Craigslist, which was a short sale. And that was it. Boom, got us in. Needed a lot of work. I did do some work on it through the years. But that was our first house. And then that was the second thing that really stuck out. I was like, man, okay. And we knew that going in. We didn't want to pay for a wedding. We always said, well, maybe when we get to our 10-year anniversary, or, when we're more financially stable, we'll do a more elaborate wedding renewal of the vows, whatever. And so we did that and bought the first house. Now, and then we had our first child, my son. So then I started getting along the lines of thinking about, man, I don't want to, now I've got a kid. I don't want to raise him here, because where we bought the house wasn't the best of schools. And we didn't want to go the route of paying hundreds of dollars per month to put my kid in a charter school, any kind of specialty school. So and then along the same lines, I was increasing rank. I made the next rank higher, but I always, at that point, I kept my spending at the E6 level of, that income I was getting is how I paid out my monthly expenses. And I always kept it under what our increasing income was. So we were able to save. And then after, I think I did another deployment. Coming back from that, I was able to save, and we bought our second home with a conventional loan. And I could have, now what I know now about VA loans, I probably could have utilized a part of that VA loan for the second home. But again, we weren't smart enough back then. So I took the conventional loan and we bought our second property. And what that did is it forced me to learn about property management, because I was still active duty, and I was getting, I was at that particular point, which would have been about, I think we bought that house in 2007, in the beginning of 2017. Which was my retirement year. And that year, a lot of stuff happened in my personal life, but I did that. So I got a bunch of books. I got on a platform called Bigger Pockets, and I started asking questions, and that all came by when I purchased the second home. My realtor said she would help me get tenants in the house. And week after week, I'm calling, nothing. Have you got any tenant applicants this week? Oh, we're still working on it. We're still, it just, oh my God. And so then I started to figure out, like, this isn't going to work. So I bought a book. First, I got on Bigger Pockets, got some recommendations, started reading those books, got another book. And next thing you know, I've got the basics down and I got tenants in the house. I found apps and programs to use for leasing, for screening tenants, everything. And I got my tenants in the house. At the same year is when my anxieties were coming up to become an issue in the military. And an example is ceremonies. Like in the military, we do advancement ceremonies, and I'd be asked to do a ceremony with somebody, and I'd just be standing in ranks, and I'd start panicking, just absolutely panicking, can barely keep my breath. And someone said, "You all right, man?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm just here to promote one of my junior petty officers, and I'm fucking breaking down here." So, and then a significant event happened where I had to get taken to an emergency hospital while I was on shore duty. So it came up to be that I was suffering from anxiety, panic attacks specifically, and I was having them all the time. I mean, but I always ignored them, and I always just found a way to not, I guess, just have an attack and then go back to work, But anyway, so I decided that it's time to retire. I said, I'm done. I started seeking help, got treatment and stuff like that. And so then I retired. And that year that I retired, the tenants in our new house had a lease. We didn't really know what to do. So I went to college. And at that time, I wanted to be an alcohol counselor. So I went to school, finally used my GI Bill and got a degree. And the degree I got was a bachelor's in sociology. But I was going to take that and become a counselor for the Marines or the Navy for addiction. But as I was going to college, you know, I really started struggling with the anxiety problem because now I had just retired of a 20-year career, and now I'm a civilian. And what the F do I do now? So I did that, and the college was really just kind of something for me to stay with other veterans, because where I went to college, there was a lot of vets, but a lot of active duty as well. So I kind of just was doing it for that. And I said, well, the only thing I know I want to do is because before I retired, I had done a little bit of counseling as an alcohol counselor, and I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed helping other sailors in that in that structure. But once I got out and got the degree, you have to have a license in California. You have to also have a license. And, with a bachelor's degree in sociology and having a license, you're barely going to make $15 an hour when I started doing all the research. And you're putting in 12 hours a day. You're putting in a lot of your own soul into helping others. And I just said, man, I can't sustain a family, because now I have my daughter was born the same year I retired. A lot happened that last year. So with all that going on, I said, no, I just, this isn't going to make it. My retirement check, I'm not really sure how that's going to come out to be. And I'm going to need to find a job. But I was struggling finding a job because I was panicking. I never had to deal with, interviews in the way that I thought I was going to be doing them. So outside of that is when I first started to see entrepreneurship, because I signed up for this app. It's kind of like an Uber, but it's for picking up furniture and dropping it off. If you have a truck, pick up and go, or I forgot what they're called, but I signed up to this thing, and they ring. Oh, okay. All I got to do is go pick up something and drop it off. And I thought, there you go. Minimal human personal contacts. Just go and do and go home on my schedule. And that got me to thinking, I need to start a business, because that company was taking $5 or whatever it was out of every job I did, or more or less. I said, I can do this by myself. So I started reading books about how to start a business. And then when I did that, I started my own moving service. But that only lasted for not even a month, because and again, I didn't think about it, but the physicality of that job was not going to happen. I'm messed up in more ways than not. And so lifting furniture was not going to work. But it didn't start off like that. The first part of it, I was doing simple things like picking up TVs out of Costco and dropping it off at someone's house. And then you get people who abuse that. Oh, I need to move my house. Well, I have a pickup truck, and that was what I made my business around that same model concept. One man in a truck or something like that, not a moving truck, a pickup. So anyway, long story short on that is it opened my mind, though, to entrepreneurship. That got me into thinking, this rental thing I'm doing right now is actually working. I've read a shit ton. I did a lot of research on how to manage properties and all that stuff. So I said, well, since I'm already renting one property, I'm going to see if I can do rentals. And so this brings me to where I'm at now. I bought my first rental property, which would have been in 2018. It's a mobile home in Arizona, because nothing in California I could find would be worth investing in. And I'll get into that in the future shows. But the short of it is I did my first rental property with a 10% return on investment. Now I'm not, it's easy to talk about it, and it sounds like something that's, oh yeah, this and that. No, it takes a lot of work, and I won't bullshit you there. But I got and the reason I did the mobile, because I didn't want to deal with mortgages, and I know that's where I kind of veer from the mainstream is, a lot of people, especially, you'll hear people talking about the BRRRR strategy, where you buy, rehab, rent, and repeat. You refinance and take that your escrow on one property, take that out and buy another property. But meanwhile, you still have a mortgage payment to cover. You still got the tenants who are, if they leave, you're on the hook for it. And man, with my anxiety, that was one of the things I kept running into with the first house, my second home that I bought. God, my tenant's going to pay that mortgage payment, So I went with mobile homes because I was able to save cash from my deployment and from other things and buy a mobile home outright. Needed a little bit of work, which I did myself. And I manage it, I rent it, I do everything myself. And it's out of state, and I'm getting a 10% return on that. So then that was like, wow, let's do this again. And then in 2019, I bought the second rental. Well, technically it'd be my third rental property. Because right now I'm currently living in my first rental property. We ended up moving into it, and then I refinanced it. And now we're ready to get out of here and rent this one out again. Because the rates just dropped crazy. I mean, I ended up getting a 2.5% conventional rate on the current property. So after a year, we're going to move on out and re-rent this again. And then I'll end up staying with 4 rental properties altogether. So that's kind of where my backstory and where I'm at now. And all while doing this on a basic income. I've always kept the cost of my spending, me and my wife and the way we do things, at a minimal. The example is like one example, and I'll do a whole show on it, but it's like your day-to-day life, your day-to-day spendings, right? One example is how we go shopping and we go to the dollar store to buy perishable items where I used to buy it at Walmart, is one example. So, when you do that week by week, month by month, the money starts adding up. And as long as you're not adding on to your spending habits, you can quickly turn that around into some profitable investments. And so that's where I'll leave this introduction today. Hope you guys see interest in this subject, and that you return every week to listen to my my gibberish talk. But no, on a serious note, that's what my show is all about, investing. And every week I'm going to talk about one specific aspect of what I'm doing, whether it be stocks, whether it be out-of-state investing. How do I do my rental property management? What programs do I use? And hopefully you can take from that and make your own decisions, right? So if you guys come back next week. I'll have another show, and leave an email about what you'd like to hear about, or if you think what I'm talking about is just crazy, or you're on the same path. I would love to collaborate and exchange ideas, and go from there. Next week I'll probably go into my frugality, because that's how it all began for me, like just living below your means. And I'll probably dip into the Dave Ramsey aspect of it a little bit there, but how I got started and what led me to thinking that. And but if there's anything else you want to know, just hit me up. I'm here, and hope this goes into grows into a nice community. Because you can do it. The thing is, no one's telling you. No one talks about it. Most of my career, I was just drinking, man. So anything, and we're always talking about work-related stuff. What a waste. But there is a reason to that. You need to vent. You need to release. You need to, because the stress environment in the military is extremely high. It's the highest work related, the highest stress related field is the military. And so it makes sense when you look in hindsight that, well, of course I'm not thinking about investing. I'm just trying to relax, man. I'm trying to have a beer. I'm trying to have fun. I'm trying to get the F out of my work and, have fun. But then you find yourself 20 years later thinking, oh shit, what am I going to do now? And there's only, you can point fingers, you can say what you got to say, but at the end of the day, it's like, what did you do, man? What did you do to fix it? So hopefully this will help you look at yourself. Again, I'm not a financial specialist, but the idea is that you start taking a look at what you're doing, and either you're on track, and if you've got better ideas, hit me up. I mean, I'm not, the main idea of why I invest is because of my stress. I'm trying to keep it as minimal as possible. The highest stress thing that I'm doing is probably managing the properties. But I've come to learn how to do that, and I will share those ways in my future episodes. So without any further ado, I guess I'll wrap it up with that and just leave you with, hope to see you back. And we'll talk to you next time. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.